host, and I'm excited to be joined by some incredible individuals who will be joining us in our conversations today. I have with me Dr. Uche Agbanusi, PhD. He is a public policy expert and analyst with a PhD degree in public policy administration, a doctor of public health administration, and former head of environmental health department, Abuja Environmental Protection Board, a former national president of the Nigerian Environmental Society, and a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners. Thank you for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
We also have Dr. Tayo Taiwo. Dr. Tayo has over 15 years of experience in the implementation of safeguards in critical sectors of the Nigerian economy, such as energy, mining, and infrastructural development. He has been actively involved in environmental advisory services to Federal Ministry of Environment, Abuja Environmental Protection Board, Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, NASRA, as well as a number of small and medium-scale enterprises across the Nigerian landscape. He is a member of the International Association of Impact Assessors through its Nigerian affiliates, AEIAN, and the Nigerian Environmental Society. It's good to have you, Dr. Tayo.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And with us is the Research and Project Officer, Climate Change at Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, a civil society organization. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Rachael.
We'll be discussing sustainable nature resource management, including the relevant laws, policies, and regulations. We'll also explore how to ensure inclusive participation of civil society organizations, communities, and right holders in decision-making processes. And most importantly, we'll talk about green economy and the many benefits that comes with it. Let's go right into the conversation. Dr. Uche, I'd love to begin with you, talking about green economy and transitioning into, the green economy. Not everyone knows the many benefits that comes with it. Our politicians, our governments, they aren't, doing enough talking as regards transitioning into the green economy. We have our governments come to talk about housing, or want to fix the roads, want to get more housings and everything, but we don't hear green economy often. So this is my question right now. What immediate steps should the government take to accelerate the transition to a greener economy, Dr. Uche?
Thank you very much, Rachel. When we are talking about green economy, we are referring to an economy that will be devoid of pollution, because the main problem on this surface earth is pollution. And when we reduce pollution in our environment, then we are going green already. And by trying as much as possible to reduce the carbon footprint we have in our activities, in most things we do, in all our jobs, all our works, whether in road construction, whether in firing industries and what have you, and even automobiles. When we begin to think about the pollution, the releases we are putting into our economy, into our environment, then we will begin to think about how to reduce this. Today, you see a lot of innovations coming from all these developed economies. People are going green. People are trying to reduce the use of fossil fuel, like PMS, like gasoline, and what have you. They want to go green now, and that is by using something like electric cars and what have you. But you need to carry the people along, because a lot of people don't even understand what we're talking about. So you need a lot of education. You need a lot of sensitization. You need a lot of carrying people along for them to understand what you mean by green economy. You cannot just say, sometimes I blame even the radio and the television stations because they are not doing much to educate the public in all these things. Most of the time when we are talking, we use a lot of high sounding words that are not even in tune with the people you are talking to. Sometimes, when you see some environmentalists, for instance, they will just come here and begin to talk about eutrophication. Or they are talking about sedimentation. They are talking about fossil fuel. How many people know what fossil fuel is? When you go out there, even some graduates don't know what fossil fuel is all about. So first of all, we must not just assume that everyone had already known all these. We must be able to lecture them, educate them, carry them along. And by so doing, people will begin to walk into what you really want to achieve in the environment. That is sustainability in the environment.
Dr. Uche, before I go to Dr. Tayo, I want us to talk about air pollution. We made mention of carbon emissions and all of that, and you say, oh, maybe the radio, the TV, they are not doing enough talking. Do you think it's just about doing the talking? Don't you think we should have more actions from the government? We should have more action from the people on seat?
Oh, you're correct. Whereas we will need the people from the government to take actions. But let me tell you, first of all, you need to educate the people. Even those in government, they need to hear. They need to learn. Does it mean that everyone in the government knows what we are talking about? You got to educate them.
We have departments for this. We have ministries for this.
Yes, but those ministries also need airing. They need to be seen. They need to be known. Do you understand? And they cannot be heard unless they go through the televisions, unless they go through the radios, unless they go through publications. But unfortunately, most Nigerians don't read. So if you put all this stuff in a book form and you just place it there, they will put it in their drawer. But if this man is sitting down in the office and he's watching the television, he's listening to the radio, even in his car, do you understand? The man, it will begin to sink. It will begin to sink into his subconsciousness and he will begin to do something about it. That is what we are talking about. You don't just say, no, it's a wrong assumption. If the television houses and if the radios are not doing enough, they should wake up now and begin to do something. Don't just wait for Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Water Resources, Ministry of Environment, Abuja Environmental Protection Board, and what have you. You need to prop them. You are in the media. There is a lot of force, a lot of power in speaking. There is a lot of force in spoken words. You don't just put it in documentation form and just leave it there. Say, after all, we have already published it. We have already given. How many people read newspapers today? How many? Maybe some of us will just look at the phone. In fact, I stopped buying newspapers of recent. I'm sorry, but I just stopped buying newspapers because a lot of them are not giving me the information I really need. You don't understand? But the phone is even giving more information than what the newspapers are giving today. So but I'm not trying to spoil their market. I'm sorry. But we must have to do something. You guys have a lot of job to do. To the public, you need to inform the public. You need to teach the public. You need to enlighten the public. You need to prompt the public. You need to push them. And you need also to push the government people. All those people that are in positions of authority. Those people that have responsibilities for some of these things. You're talking about pollution. Pollution has no boundary. You can't say, okay, the Ministry of Environment, it's your job. It doesn't hold. Because when you begin to think about that, when you begin to leave it for them, we may eventually all be swallowed by pollution of one form or the other in our society. So we must do something
So we
quickly.
could say this is a collective
It's
call.
a collective responsibility. Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Tayo, let's talk about the challenges. I mean, key challenges in implementing sustainable natural resource management laws and policies, and how these challenges can be addressed.
Thank you, Rachel. I think if you're in Nigeria, you know that it's not as if we don't have policies or how to manage these challenges that we're talking about. The issue has always been enforcement. We have laws, yet we don't enforce them. Basically, so Nigeria is a very typical example of when you look at it. Just Dr. Ojo just talked about books. Of course, policies are domiciled in a lot of books and publications that we have. However, how have we translated these policies into action? And that's very important. For as long as we do not translate what we've got, Nigeria could be in court, one of the best countries that have policies. However, if you have policies that are just sitting in your cupboards or just sitting, it's not being, you know, used, then it's a big problem. So I want to say that enforcement is the major issue that we're having, but I cannot just stop at saying it's enforcement. It's also the will by the government. We don't have, there's not, I think the transparency in how these things are being enforced to is lacking. So we need to have what I would tag, a continuous collaborative synergy. And what do I mean by that? In Nigeria, it is said that we have freedom of, information. Unfortunately, freedom of information is not free. I mean, you don't. How many times do you have access to this information as well? That kind of a thing. I'm sure that my brother from the CSO is going to say a lot of things they face when it comes to we want to just have this and all that kind of a thing. And in most cases, what they're trying to do is to make sure that the government actually do what they should do. For instance, let me just give this to you. We're talking about cutting out deforestation, basically, but a lot of deforestation is still ongoing, even by government itself,
Yes.
basically.
Yes.
So when the people that are supposed to regulate what we're talking about are the ones also above the so-called laws, then you're going to be having a lot of issues. So how do we get away from all those things that I'm talking about? One, government has got to allow inclusivity for everybody. Nobody is lame when it comes to managing the natural resource. In the villages, there are lots of things that are being done, you know, to manage even the natural resource. The person knows that look, if I leave this tree, if I cut down this tree and I don't replant it, I'm going to go bare after a while. So they try to even do the things we don't want to do. But when we, the so-called elites, come into the fray, we cut all the trees. There's something when it comes to conservation. That's what he said. You cut one, you replace it by five. That is the norm. But let me ask you this question: how many places are this being practiced? We have a particular issue that is ongoing. I don't want to mention. There was a time when in Cross River State, somebody came out with one very lovely idea in quote that he wants to build a super highway and all that kind of a thing, and it was going to go into, protected areas, basically. And I can say this because I knew what went on. And then you see, when government and twist his own organizations that are supposed to regulate, you begin to have issues. It took a lot of issues, it took a lot of doing from the Prime Minister of Environment to say, look, we're not going to do this. Some other international organizations also came into the fore to try to do this and all that kind of a thing. So what we lack, basically, in trying to do this is this: government needs to step into the will space to say, look, we have these laws, we're going to enforce them. Basically, if you're not careful, some regulators have been beat up just because they're trying to enforce the laws of the land. What happened to them? If you don't begin to do that, but we cannot say we're going to stop doing it. We've got to keep on talking about it. We've got to continue, and that's why I think it's going to be very encouraging for CSOs to come into it. I know that international donor agencies are also trying to make sure that they improve the capacity of trying to do this, because just like Dr. Richard said, how many of us actually know what is going on? I'm not saying derogatorily. I think quite a lot of people are bothered about doing other things than when you talk about conservation, they start looking at you. What's that going to put on my table? And all that kind of a thing. We need to move from that. And a lot of education would have to come into doing that. But government will still have to take the higher ground on that to say, okay, fine, we have these laws and we've got to enforce it, basically. Then it can now cascade down. For me, it's a top bottom approach. It's not bottom top approach. The government, if you are the father in a home, it's what you're doing that your children are going to be doing. Basically, government needs to enforce their laws, make sure that they back it up with the will with it, and also encourage other non-governmental organizations that are trying to do this to be able to get it done. That is the way that these challenges can be addressed.
Okay, Dr. Tai, you made mention of deforestation. And
Yeah.
you also mentioned that we have our government who are even actively involved in deforestation.
Sure.
And I want to mention this. We have in our constitution, I think section 20 of the 1999 constitution, which says the state has the responsibility
Sure.
of safeguarding the forest, wildlife. But now you mentioned that this same government are the one who are actively involved in this. I want to ask again, how can this be addressed?
It can be addressed. You see, I think, let me just backtrack a bit. There was a time in this country that I want to go back to the NSAS thingy. That NSAS was just getting away with murder, everything they were doing and all that kind of a thing. And something came up. They may not tell you that that particular protest that happened then, it stopped a lot of things. At least the NSAS team was disbanded, basically. And that's why, you see, it was disbanded and government started doing what they were supposed to do, even though they politicized it. But let us be realistic. Where is NSAS today? It's gone. And every day, the police is trying to, I'm sorry that I had to go in there to just tell you something. They're just trying to get this thing done bit by bit. I would also tell you something. It was the government that was trying to go into a protected area, rich forest that other people, other countries are trying to, protect. The problem with us is that government has to have the will to force it. There's a particular place, is it Gallup? I'm forgetting it, in Ecuador right now, that is protected. Basically, what they have done is that they've stopped. They said, well, we are only going to have X number of vehicles. Before you can bring any other number of vehicles into, you can buy a new vehicle into the place. One vehicle has to go out of the space, basically. And why are they doing that? They're doing that because they want to limit. Sorry, nobody is going to come there as a resident because, they feel that, look, it's enough. And you have wildlife that are protected. In fact, you'll be walking on the street, you have wildlife. I'm struggling to get the name, but I guess I'm going to get it very soon. But you see, that's what we need to do, basically. It was still the same government that stopped that process from going, basically. You have the state government trying to do something, and then you have the federal government through the Federal Ministry of Environment, here department, trying to make sure that this does not go on. But they had to find a way to do it. But they did not do it alone. The non-governmental organizations within and without had to come into it and push and make lots of noise. So when Dr. Richard said lots of noise, I want to put it, noise, if you're listening to heavy music right now, it's still noise. There's good noise, there's bad noise, basically. We need to make good noise about it. We need to also encourage and not gag NGOs that are trying to do this. Of course, we're not perfect. NGOs are not going to be perfect. Some are going to do something but if they don't make noise about it, something is going on in Lagos right now regarding the Lagos Calabar, highway, coastal highway, and all that kind of a thing. Quite a lot of things are going on, and if people were not making noise, I can tell you that that's why I said the same government is one that is not enforcing its laws, because the government knows that, look, this is what I'm doing is going to impact negatively on people, yet they still went ahead to do it, basically. And people started shouting, making all the noises, and then they started backtracking, trying to see how they can fix what they should not have done in the first instance, and all that kind of thing. So for me, what's going to happen is that, one, government has to step up to do that. Departments that are supposed to regulate and protect our resources are supposed to be encouraged, and then CSOs should not be gagged. We need to make more, including you, that you're doing this podcast today, need to be able to take a fine look. We need to look for CSO out there that are going to do this. And to make this noise too, we need resources. Just putting this together needs resources. So we need to go where, I want to say that organizations out there, basically that have the resources to do it. We need to get them on board to do what they need to do. And when these resources come on board too, we should not waste it. Because in Nigeria, we're a wasteful lot. I'm sorry to say that, but that's just the way it is. When we put all these things, it may not happen in one day because I know that I just told you something was happening sometimes in Cross River, but it's no longer happening right now because of the noise. If nobody made noise, then I can tell you that thing would have been done, and then the sensitive species that we have in all those places, both fauna and flora and wildlife, will have been become extinct. Basically, it would just be a once a time thing. So to just close this up is to say that it's still government that we continue to engage them. That look, you've got these laws and it's got to be done. And other people that I feel should get into the fray to make sure that these laws are actually enforced are environmental lawyers, basically, because laws are going to be interpreted by environmental lawyers and they need to step into it. Maybe I don't know whether there are NGOs that are actually into environmental law. We need to engage them more to be able to do those things and get them done. That's just what I'm going to say for now.
Thank you, Dr. Tayo.
You're welcome.
So let's come to our CSO. Let's talk about right holders. When we're talking about right holders, we're talking about women, children, communities, indigenous people. How can they be, more effectively engaged in environmental decision-making processes?
Okay, thank you so much, Rachael. Yeah, I'm just going to dwell a bit from borrow insights from Dr. Uche and Dr. Tayo. Yeah, so if you observe the trend of environmental degradation in Nigeria, you see the people who suffer this are the citizens. Most of them are in vulnerable communities in the hinterlands who don't have access to information, who don't have access to education. And Dr. Uche spoke a lot about education. That's a problem, and that's one of the main problem of talking about rights in the environmental sector. So people don't have knowledge of what they are doing right and what they are doing wrong. So if you look at the trend in environmental interaction over the years, you see before this age where we live, communities have a way of protecting their own environment, their own ecosystem. And like Dr. Tayo rightly mentioned, that everybody is capable of protecting themselves, right? So there are taboos, there are customs, there are traditions that have been put in place where you can't enter some forests, you can't do some things. These things were the local way where people protect their environment. But if we speak on today's balance, a lot of relearning have not been done. People have been told that their belief system, what they know before, is not valid, and they are meant to start embracing new knowledge. But the new knowledge they are embracing is not inclusive in respect of these issues. So if you check the curriculum in schools, for example, there is no environmental education in quotes, right? So they teach you so many things. They teach you how to use plastic, how it is better, it is easier, you can do so much more. Yeah, so they don't tell you the impact of those things, you get. So that is why when you travel outside Nigeria, you would go to places and you won't find nylon. Like you won't find nylon on the ground. It's not because they don't use it, you get. So when now to speak directly to the questions, when industries, when miners, for example, people who do industrial activities come to any community to set up their plant, to set up their factory, the people don't know the impact of what they want to do. They take advantage of their ignorance to engage them in menial jobs. They don't pay them enough, and they don't also ask questions. They don't know what it will benefit the individuals in the community. They don't know what the community itself will benefit. And the government organizations and MDAs are responsible for checking them, to checkmating them, are not also doing their job right. So in the place of civil society represents the people, right? And I work in the civil society space. I mean, we do a lot, but a lot also is not being done. And the reason why this is so is because of the policies in place. So there are several policies around the environment in Nigeria, but one policy that speaks directly to environmental protection that is weak in Nigeria currently is the EIA. Yeah, so the EIA puts in perspective and in respect the social aspect of the environment, the environmental aspect itself, and the economic aspect, right? So it looks at what is the country gaining, what is the community gaining, what is the individual in the community going to gain, and how is it going to affect the environment. Yeah, but the trend, we don't have it. It is weak, and everybody is a perpetrator, even the government itself, right? And like it's example of the River States highway. If not because there was a lot of noises, and particularly the international organization that had interest in biodiversity of that area, it would have gone, and some would have lost some life forms that are endemic in that place. I'm happy to hear yesterday that the Lagos Highway had been suspended for now, if not because of the noise that were made by civil society organizations, that would have gone. And the reasons they gave was that it could affect certain cables underground. Now, who knows if the cable issue we had a month ago was because of that activity? We don't know,
Yes.
right? So, and nobody's even talking about, they're not
Yes.
talking about the life forms in it. So, civil society play a lot of role, and one way the civil society can help is, first of all, we need to amend existing laws to harmonize them. That agencies that are responsible within government know that it is their responsibility. Sometimes there is interlapping, there's this interlap of activity where so a certain agency would, I mean, we interact a lot with different government agencies. Now, you want to do something with this, the other people say, no, it is our responsibility. Then somebody will say, no, it is not your responsibility, it's just to be asked. So there's a need for harmonization of existing policy. We need to amend the policies, right? We need to strengthen agencies. So I've been privileged to meet directors of certain agencies and that are poised, that want to do so much, but the capacity of the agency it leads in terms of finance, in terms of the human capital, is not enough. So this federal government is supposed to be everywhere, it's supposed to lead or everywhere in the country, but I mean, do we have them everywhere? You get, so many times government wants to work, but it is not even aware of what is happening, what is going on, because the what it is regulating, it doesn't have the capacity to go everywhere to see everything that is being done. So I feel like communication is important, right? We need to have a stronger communication strategy within government and CSOs work with the government, CSO works with the people, right? So there should be a better synergy in that communication synergy, a communication strategy that is national. And also we need to amend existing laws and harmonize them and give agencies that are supposed to be in charge the power to do their job, and the government also needs to fund these agencies. Yeah, but overall education is really really important, and CSOs should do more environmental education, and environmental education should be included in our curriculum. Yeah, it is high time it is included in the curriculum. From primary schools, children should know their rights, right? Women should know their rights. Everyone in the society should know their rights. And when they are introducing you, asking you to do certain things, you don't feel like they are benefiting you. One of the reasons why environmental issue thrives in Nigeria is because when some group of persons come to a community to come and set up something, they make them believe that you are going to benefit. Once we have this thing here, you have
And they're
the
excited
wealth
as
of,
well.
yeah, so they are excited, they accept it,
Yeah.
not knowing the implications. So there's no any assessment, there's no open forum where we discuss, where we have the antagonists in this community to come and say, no, this thing cannot work. We don't give people fair hearing, right? So some persons who call themselves stakeholders will just go represent them, get something, and everyone suffer after 20 years, right? So we see that happening in Niger Delta.
This time around, it's not even after 20 years anymore. We're
Yeah,
seeing
so we are seeing it almost
yes.
immediately. It's happening in Niger Delta, in Castina, in the gold mines. It is happening. It is so bad that now you hear bandits even mining, right? So I feel that's a way to go around it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's come to you, Dr. Uche. Let's talk about international cooperation. We've had, so many international bodies, UN, come to Nigeria, go to African countries, just to talk about, that diversifying, transitioning into a green economy. So let's talk about international cooperation. What role can international cooperation play in supporting sustainable natural resource management globally?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. A cooperation among nations is key to having what we call world peace. and sustainable development globally. There is no way any single nation can do it alone or can go it alone. Be you a capitalist nation, be you a socialist nation, be you whatever thing name you give to your economy, it does not matter. But let me tell you, if there is no cooperation among both those capitalists, those socialists, those whatever they call their names, or they call their economies, if there is no cooperation among them, the global environment will be destroyed totally and completely. So one of the things we must do is that, first of all, we must agree that we must agree to agree. We must come together. We must do things together because we are living in one environment globally. Now, in 1992, there was this meeting in Rio de Janeiro where they talked about conservation of resources, especially all these resources we have, vegetational destructions and what have you. So they are talking about the conservation of trees, of forests, of rivers, and what have you in 1992. And it was repeated again in 2002 in South Africa, Joburg to be precise. And I happened to also be there in Joburg. I represented a Nigerian NGO that presented paper in Joburg in 2002, that is South Africa. The need to come together is much. There's no way you can go it alone. And let me tell you that pollution does not need visa to go into your country or to come into your home. Does not need visa. Pollution can move to anywhere. When you begin to destroy a particular part of the globe, it's just a matter of time. It will get to you. And when you begin to overutilize the resources, very soon we will even lack oxygen we are going to use to survive in this globe. So there is nothing so important more than coming together to discuss about these issues, then begin to know how we're going to help the poor nations, because there are so many things that are causes of destruction in natural resources. What are those things? Poverty. Do you understand? You can't tell this man don't cut down the trees and he has no alternative. This guy must eat, he must feed. You can't ask him not to cut down the trees. What alternative have you given him? That is number one. Number two, you see that apart from that, there is this overutilization of natural resources. You have them, people will just go because they want to do this industry, maybe in a paper or pulp industry. You are now going to cut down all they call it loggers. They will log everything. They are not considerate about what the advantages of the trees, that these trees are the ones that give us oxygen we use to survive, apart from the one we got from the river, from the seas. But we also have these things. And these trees we are cutting down, that we call them carbon sinks. These are the ones that take this carbon dioxide we have taken out. They are taking it, use it to even manufacture food for us to survive. But we are cutting down those trees. So the world leaders saw it as something very, very necessary that they must come together and discuss. And discussion involves you. You as a big brother nation or nations, you must trade in something. You have the capital, you have the money, but this man hasn't got the money, hasn't got the capital. So there must be trading. Do you understand? There must be some trade-offs. You must give out something. You can't tell me not to cut the wood when I don't have something I will use to cook. I don't have stove. I don't have gas. So you're telling me not to feed. Oh no! Don't cut down the trees.
That
No.
person cutting down that tree for firewood, even if he's aware that what I'm doing is wrong, he does not have an option.
Oh, he has no option. So that is why those big brother nations, those that have gotten the capital, those that have gotten the money, they should now trade in something. And that is why they must bring in some technologies. Do you understand? Or even if they don't bring their technologies, maybe it's too high for this nation, they should be able to give loans, give overdrafts, you know, that is not killing. They want, because I don't subscribe to all these, oh, give me money without paying anything. Once you give people money like that, or give them stuff like that, they misuse it. But when they know that you must pay back something, then they will become more conscious to utilization of that resource, that money you have given to them. I'm talking about liquidity now, liquid cash, which the nations can bring, and some capital equipment which they will bring, maybe for our agric, so that we will stop using this stuff of trying to overfish, over farm, over utilize our forests. They will give us alternatives. That is the reason why the global economy must always think about, although you're taking this action locally, you must think globally. If you don't think globally, do you understand? Like I mentioned before, pollution has no need to carry visa to come into your country. We are all living in this planet Earth together. If we die, we will die here together. So the best thing is for you to help those poor nations. That is the need, the reason why we must have these global meetings, global support, economic support to the poor nations, so that they will not be able to overutilize their natural resources, so that they will be able to do things and do it sustainably. So they need a lot of support. If you don't support them, they will survive on their own. They don't care. They don't care about whether they are pulling down the trees, because the poor man hasn't got alternative. Do you understand? And again, the basic needs we have, we don't even, basic human needs. Some of these countries, we don't have them. Do you understand? They should help us also when we have these things. It will help us for our own economic growth also. You need a lot of global cooperation. You don't just say no country will survive on its own. I still say, if America thinks they can survive on their own, don't worry. We will pollute here, and it will get to them. Yes. So they need a lot of support to us. We don't need to be begging them as such. Do you understand? Because once you start begging, they will see themselves as big brother. Then they will start meddling into your political spheres and other spheres of the nation governance, which I don't support. Because you're giving me support for agric, now you will now direct me who will lead my nation. I don't agree to that. I don't agree to that. Do you understand? You now begin to dictate to me who should rule me and who should not. No. It should be, I cannot play your own or run your own type of democracy. My own democracy should evolve from me, from my own society. What I'm doing, every home. If you go to your house today, you have your own type of democracy. How you people live in your place. It might be different from my own home. The way the people will behave in my own home might be different. So you cannot just give me your own type of democracy. That is what you must do. Otherwise, we withdraw support from you. They're using it as a very, very a terrible tool to suppress nations, oppress them, and by so doing, they will even begin to support insurrections within the nations so that they will begin either they overthrow their president or they overthrow their prime ministers or do all manner of things. Let me tell you, some of these things are economic because of some of the things they believe they will gain from you. That is why they're doing that. And the time has come for these poor nations, for these lower economies, which Nigeria is one of them, to begin to shine their eyes, to begin to think outside the box, and begin to know how to survive on their own, and not to lean on international countries, But that does not mean that we will not cooperate with them globally. We must, because most of these things, you see, we have signed a lot of things. We have signed so many conventions, treaties. We have signed all these things. So, yes, that is part of cooperation globally. But are we really doing it right? Must the big nations tell us what to do? Does it mean that we don't have sense of reasoning? That they must reason for us? Do you understand? But if they come to us and bring superior argument and tell us, from the research they must have carried out because they have research industries and all these things, they have done it for years, this is the result, then we begin to talk like partners. That I support global cooperation, but I don't want suppression. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Uche. So finally, before we wrap up on the show, let's talk about environmental rights. Adeni he made mention of curriculum in school when he was talking about education. He said, the only thing that they teach our children in school, water pollution, air pollution, and all of that. We don't have the real, deep education of these environmental rights in schools. So let's talk about environmental rights. How can environmental protection be balanced with environmental rights obligations such as right to development and economic growth?
I think you've confused me with that question. And I'm going to tell you why you've confused me. Environmental protection itself is a balance, basically. So when you say that, how can environmental balance be balanced with
environmental rights?
With rights, basically. Already, that right you're talking about, what environmental protection seeks to do? It seeks to protect the rights of both human beings, the environment, the animals. Let me begin to put them in context right now. I said both human beings, the animals, the environment. The environment contains, we're talking about, Dr. Oche has been talking about air pollution, talking about that so that you can live well, basically. And that's why I said that you have just confused me. My head is running rings round. So this is how I'm going to put it. Basically, there is no development without some destruction of the environment. However, what environmental protection seeks to do is to make sure that, and that's why we have what we call, he talked about environmental and social impact assessment. Either though in Nigeria, we used to just say environmental impact assessment. But there's a critical component of that environment that we're not mentioning. And so we're moving to other developing countries, developed countries have moved into that, basically. They now say environmental and social impact assessment. And when my introduction that you said, we've moved away from just saying protection. We're safeguarding the future. We're safeguarding the environment. And that's why I said the balance you're talking about actually is environmental protection, environmental safeguards, because that is what actually protects. Because let me put it this way. I think he said something. He said CSOs, because they kept making that noise and all that kind of a thing. I'll continue to say it's noise. And please, you pardon me. The noise I'm saying here is when you're dancing to music, it's good noise.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, it makes some noise. If I have to measure that on a decibel, I'll be measuring it. It's the noise. But there is unwanted noise and there's wanted noise, basically. So where I'm going to is this, and that's why I say I got confused. One, the human rights obligation that we're talking about is actually protected when a country or a nation or an organization decides to embed the environmental protection. If I am into logging, for instance, what it means is that I have an environmental and social management system that says that, look, I'm going to cut this trees down. However, I'm also going to, do what we call offsets. And what is offsets? I'm cutting it down here. I can't immediately, put the trees up here. I'm going to go to another place and plant trees, basically. And the norm, like I said, is usually this, because we know that, yes, you can plant 5 trees now. Maybe it's 2 that are going to survive.
Yeah.
So if you cut down 1, you're going to plant 5, basically. And what is it trying to do? It's protecting the rights of that community. It's protecting the right. And it spirals up, because if we continue to talk about it, we're not going to finish today. But let me just put it this way. For instance, when you cut down tree, what it means is that you have reduced the carbon sequestration capacity of that particular environment. And what does it do? All of us, we breathe out. That's carbon monoxide, basically. Basically what the tree does anywhere, and that's why it usually say you should landscape. When you want to develop, even though we don't really do it, they ask us to say, okay, fine, please, you can use a percentage of your plot to develop. Please make sure you plant trees or something like that. Even psychologically, it has something that it does to you. If I get into an office where you have flowers and all that kind of a thing, even if I'm tired, I'll be looking at the scenery. It has something that it's doing to me mentally, basically. And that's your human rights. I have my mental rights. In a lot of spaces, your mental rights, your human rights is actually not protected, basically. And that's why I said this question is okay, like, so Rachael, Rachael, now relax, I'm coming. This is like, Rachael just want to model over my head. And why you do choose me to model over my head? But I'll answer the question because we're going somewhere, basically. So as it is, I understand what you're saying. But what I'm trying to say is that human rights obligations are already encapsulated in environmental protection. And that is why you would discover one thing. If we did not have human environmental protection as it is, as weak as my brother Adeni says, the Cross River episode would have actually gone and nothing would have happened. That's why I'm saying that. That is what environmental protection seeks to do. That is what the laws, no matter how weak they are at the moment, seeks to do. But I want to say something because I'm cross-bordering now with what we've said. What's going to happen is this. If we want to get these things right, there's got to be a framework. The federal government is going to have a framework. It's talking about capacity. The issue is that right now we have what we call SEPAs, but they're not. I won't say human capital resourced. That's not what I'm saying. They are not when it comes to when it comes to content resourced enough to say this is what we're going to do. Because, for instance, what I would do if I were in government and I could do something about it is that the federal government is going to say, okay, fine, look, this is what we can do. We know we cannot get into all nooks and crannies. We empower the states. Then we do meetings. And when we're doing our meetings, CSOs, CBOs, and co, NGOs, whatever, are going to be there. He says something. There is know-how. You're not going to have people who are going to antagonize you when you get into a particular place. Actually, you can use the antagonism to actually be better, basically. So, to summarize, what's going to happen is that how you want to balance this is to make sure that the critical components of environmental protection, which is you want to protect the environment, you also want to protect the social whatever, you also want to do what we are now calling community-based investment, as opposed to stakeholders engagement. Because stakeholders engagement is just, I come in, I do what I want to do. But when it comes to community-based investment, it's continuous. It's going to always continue to say whatever. I'll get this large whatever right now. I'll paint a scenario for you. I've worked with a donor funding organization, the international, that what they do is this. Social component is usually the most problematic. And how do they do that? You have what we call, resettlement action plan. Once you're going to resettle people, you have to prepare a resettlement action plan. You also have to itemize people because there are 2 types of things these people are losing. It's either they're losing their economic livelihood or they're losing the particular resource that they have, land, crops, and so on and so forth. In some other cases, so you write all those things down and you make sure that you get NGOs to come and validate what you have done. They're externals. They want to see, okay, fine, you said to this person, you've paid this much. Fine, you're going to do that. I'm just giving you an example of how rights are being, preserved. If we do it very well, you're going to get that done. There's also another thing called livelihood restoration program. Now, I'm not resettling you as a person moving from the place, but I feel that, look, because of what I'm doing, I have stopped you from earning your livelihood. I've got to write up or prepare what we call a livelihood restoration program that I'm going to fund. Basically, if this person, it is as basic as when I'm going along a road and I want to rebuild that road, there is an akara seller, there's a granite seller. Those organizations are saying that those guys, it is where they are in their livelihood. If you take away their livelihood, you are going to also go back. You're reducing them. They're already below the poverty threshold, then you're sinking them further. So you're trying to protect their rights. I hope with that example, I've been able to tell you that is how environmental protection is going to actually balance whatever we want to develop. If you want to develop a dam, you're going to displace people. Unfortunately, what we're not doing very well is actually putting the right how do I put it now? We're not when it comes to evaluating properly. Okay, fine. If I take your crop away, it is not just that time that your crop is being taken away that's the issue. I've got to evaluate in such a way to say that, okay, if in 6 months you cannot get back, I've got to pay you for that space. Basically, those are the issues. However, I'm going to close this by saying also, we also need to be mindful that anybody who wants to develop also wants to make money. So we should have a balance to make sure that the guy is not going to wake up and say, sorry, I don't think this is profitable for me any longer. So the balance is going to come, okay, fine. But the civil societies, but the stakeholders, human beings, got to be able to have a balance also to say, okay, fine, look, I want this company to exist. But I also do not want it to make sure that while they're existing and profiting, that I don't go out of existence.
Basically, what we're all saying is we need more education.
Sure.
Understand that you have an environmental right. It is your right to have clean air. It is your right. You should understand that. That's basically what we're saying. And we need more education in schools from the government. The government should do more, CSO should do more, NGOs basically do more. And you also, help yourself. You have a right to a clean environment. That's it on the Green Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you.